Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to this edition of What Would You Miss? Today, I have on a very special friend who, let's just be truthful, we didn't really like each other when we first met.
Truth.
However, we became the best of friends. So, welcome, Gabe, to What Would You Miss?
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you on here to chat with a little bit. I know our setup's a little different. Thank you, coronavirus, for closing down the colleges. But yes, we could still have a really healthy, open conversation about suicide and, our feelings around it. I jokingly said that we didn't like each other, but the truth is, when Gabe and I first met, I thought he was a pompous ass, which he is, and he
And I
thought I.
thought she was a loudmouth cow, which, she is. But we've
But we
come to love and embrace that.
This is so true. You're actually one of my go-to people when I'm really feeling down and in a dark place. You really do help me a lot with your honesty and your humor, and I thank you so much for that. So you have a movie coming out that was supposed to debut in the theaters, and we were going to have a release. And I know that when people watch this, it will already have aired. So tell me a little bit about how you got to that movie and what happened. What happened, Gabe?
What happened? Well, right. And that's what we're supposed to ask people. Like, I used to work in a psychiatric hospital, and we had some staff members who weren't very empathic, and they would say, "What's wrong with you?" And we were taught, like, no, there's nothing wrong with these people. You have to say, what happened to you? Because something
Right.
happened to all of us, really. And so what happened to me? Oh, well, several things happened to me, but what happened to me to get me to this film? I kind of broke it down really quickly for someone yesterday in an email, and I did it like via bullet points, just like quick and dirty. Like, okay,
Right.
here's what happened. First of all, my aunt killed herself in 2004 in a psychiatric hospital in Israel. And that was definitely one of the things that, quote, happened to me and happened to our family, that sort of led me on the journey towards making this film. The second thing that happened to me was, of course, having my own mental health struggles with depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts in college, and sadly more recently than that. So that kind of brought me into that sort of inner world of mental health and suicide. And then professionally, as I mentioned just now, working in a psychiatric hospital with folks who are suicidal, homicidal, unable to care, experiencing myriad kinds of psychiatric emergencies, that really kind of pushed me into the world of suicide prevention, really with both feet, whether I was ready or not. So having exposure to that kind of population day in and day out really changed the way I thought about suicide and about people who experience suicidal ideation and have suicide attempts. I think that I had kind of bought into the myth that there's this type of person who kills themselves or tries to kill themselves, and then there's people who don't. And that's just nonsense, as I learned from working at the hospital. It's all my internet connection is unstable.
Yes, you just
Wow,
went
isn't
out
that
for
the
just a
story of
minute.
my life?
You just went out for a minute.
Farts.
Um, you
So where
just
where should I pick up?
no, you all you said was about how you bought into this one idea of people, and then bam, guess what? That's really not the idea. Like everybody is out there. I think is what you were saying. He is.
Yes.
Yes, I thought you were frozen again.
I no, you were like, I was like, uh-oh, she had a stroke. Um, so yeah, I mean, I really realized that this can touch anybody
Yes.
in any socioeconomic status, in any race or ethnicity. Of course, there are groups that are impacted differently, but really anybody could be at risk of attempting to take their own life or taking their own life. And so all of these different factors combined sort of led me to want to make this film. It's an hour-long film about spreading suicide awareness. AnnMarie is in the film. I traveled up and down the East Coast in my 1963 VW Beetle Herbie the Love Bug replica, which bears the Lifeline number all over its rear window. And my goal was to have conversations with people about suicide and mental health. And so that's what I did. And really that's why I did it.
Yeah, and when you did come up here, we went to my kids' track meet, and I remember just pulling it in, and immediately people just come over to the car and want to have a conversation. So, as
Yeah.
some people probably look at it like, what is he doing with this love bug car? It really did help people bring up a conversation. Like it was just easy to talk about
Yeah,
because of the car.
I think it's this innocent, sweet thing that people have these nostalgic memories of from the late '60s and the early '70s. All of the Herbie films. So many people had bugs of their own. So it's this thing that draws you in, and people want to talk cars for a little bit usually, and then they see the Lifeline number, and the conversation goes in a completely different direction. And I love that. And it's not just about driving the car around. It's about what happens when you make the human connection. And I'm just so lucky to be able to do what I do the way I do it. I just love every day with him.
So I'm going to jump around a little bit. When you and I first met, and I interviewed you for Wisdo for my real job,
Yep.
I remember you said a couple of things about being in college and having to deal with all the stress. And I think it's really important right now because our college community is suffering so desperately with everything that's going on. They're scared, there's uncertainty, there's stress about school. And we need to provide them with some mental health support. Like we truly, truly do. That experience to you was obsolete, right?
What experience?
Like having mental health support when you were in college.
Oh, well, right. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I was in a situation where I was being bullied relentlessly by multiple people who lived on my hall, and I had nobody to go to. I was a freshman, so it wasn't like I had made all these friends and all these social connections,
Right.
people I felt safe with and trusted. I didn't know virtually anybody. Um, and so I didn't have the tools. First of all, I don't even think if I had those connections that I would have been able to open up, because I just didn't. The social structure surrounding being open and honest about what you're experiencing and trusting your peer, that really wasn't a part of my college experience. And the counseling center was this sort of far off place tucked away behind a big hedge, and nobody said anything about it like during orientation, like, hey, this is a resource that's here for you if you're struggling. I didn't know about it until I needed it, really.
Right.
Now, fortunately, the college landscape is very different. However, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of students who are not in school anymore. They don't have access to their counseling centers. They're adrift in this sea of uncertainty due to COVID-19. They don't know if they're graduating. They don't know what is going on. And it's an extremely difficult and challenging time. And I guess what I would say about that is to just remind people that it's an uncertain time for everyone, and that you're not alone in however you're feeling about this, and however you're feeling about it is valid. And use Zoom like we're using, use
Yes.
Skype, use whatever medium you can, Facebook Live, FaceTime, whatever, to reach out to people. Whether you're not doing well, or whether you suspect someone else isn't, or whether you just want to prevent somebody from getting to the point where they're not doing well,
Right.
and just check in and maintain those social connections, because this is such a messed up time.
We need social connection. I mean, that I think is the hardest part. It's not, I mean, I know people are losing their jobs and people are dying. That's not what I'm saying. So please no hate mail about that. But it's really hard to lose that connection. I actually just said to one of my best friends the other day, like, I miss hugging. Like, I'm a hugger, and
Yeah.
I miss just seeing someone somewhere and just hugging them. And now, like, there's that reaction like, oh, let's do an elbow, which I respect completely.
But it
But we
sucks.
do, it does, it sucks. And we really need that social connection. We really do. We're humans. That's what we do. Even introverts, you still have a bit of social connection, or agoraphobia, like you still are connecting at some form. You still need to be able to reach out. And I just hope that people can really use resources right now because it's dire time.
Yeah, and just a couple of days ago, I sent you that screenshot of our hug from the
Yes.
film when I first pulled up in your driveway, and I was watching the film, like doing the final just check to make sure all the captions were correct and spelling and all of that. And what I was really taken with was how much hugging there is in this film.
Oh,
And like me and my dad and my friend Stephanie, and like there's so much hugging. And that's one of the reasons why I was like, God, we need to do a virtual premiere. People need to see people hugging. People
Oh my
need
God, Gabe,
to
I love that.
like experience that vicariously. And I think the film is a big hug in and of itself.
Right.
It's a kind of reassuring, hopeful thing. And that's what a hug is. It's an embrace and it's warm. And we need that kind of sort of second best feeling to an actual hug that we can get wherever we can find it.
So you had said about how Herbie is like a little thing that can open up a big conversation. And honestly, when you were the first person I brought What Would You Miss to. I called you up and I said, I got an idea. And I told you about it. And I said, it's about what would you miss? And I said, what should it be called? And you said, what would you miss?
Ah.
And I didn't even think of the title to be like that. And you have been a really strong supporter. Tell me, tell everyone, what did you think when I brought you this idea? Like, what would you miss? And what did you think?
Well,
Knowing all you know.
So suicide prevention, I think so much of it is wrapped up in the question, which is, of course, so I'm a QPR trainer, and QPR stands for question, persuade, refer. There's all these other acronyms. So on my trip, I handed out ACE cards. So ACE is ask, care, engage. So the A in ACE, the Q in QPR, it's all about the question. And the question, of course, is, are you thinking about killing yourself? Right. Are you having thoughts of suicide, right? Yeah. So, and that is the question that we have to be able, as a society, to be able to ask someone if we're concerned. And if the answer is no, great. The answer is no. But, just asking that question, you can really take someone's breath away and move the conversation into a whole new level. Similarly, when you came to me with the idea for What Would You Miss, what I loved about it was it's a question. And it's a very critical question related to suicide prevention. And it's one of those questions that, very similarly to, are you thinking about killing yourself? It's like a showstopper. It stops you in your tracks. It gets you to think in a completely different way. And that simple question, what would you miss, really stops you. And it really gets you to think critically about your life and what is around you and what it is that you hold dear. And like when we go through our day, we don't think about this stuff. No. Just as we're on our way to the coffee maker, rubbing sleep out of our eyes, don't touch your face, and all that kind of stuff. But when you do ask that, you really do get to think about your life and what matters to you, and what would you miss? It's a wonderful question. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I've struggled for a long time, and that question just seemed to open up so much in my life, and it opened up things that I didn't think it was going to open up. And it wasn't about my house or my job or my kids. It was about me. And I think when you're in that really dark place, to reflect on yourself is, first of all, hard. But when you do, it does give you a sense of worth. Like, holy crap, I really am worth something, because that's what you feel, that level of unworthiness. And it's detrimental. I've noticed, on social media right now with everything going on, there's been a lot of talk first about people's mental health, but I see, hordes of people posting about their drinking, I'm drinking to survive, which I get, people eating, which I get. It's really playing into our community in both addiction and eating disorder, in mental health. And I'm really worried about how our community on a whole is going to take this afterwards. I'm really concerned. We need more What Would You Miss and more, A Beautiful Day Tomorrow. We really do.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm very concerned about what could potentially happen with suicides related to this pandemic.
Yes.
As we know, and I posted about this on Instagram a couple of days ago. So this idea that suicides increase during the Christmas season is called the Miracle. And what the hell is that film called?
Miracle on 34th.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm Jewish. So the Miracle on 34th Street myth, right?
Yeah.
Kind of perpetuated by this film, when actually research indicates that the suicide rate increases in the spring. Well, yes. As you can see from your quarantine windows, the trees are popping and all the girls be stopping, and everything's in bloom, right? And
Yep.
so we're coming to that spring, and this is perhaps the most dangerous spring we've ever encountered as far as mental health and suicide. Um, People are experiencing job loss. People are experiencing furlough, economic uncertainty, occupational instability, marital strife, all this kind of stuff. And then there's the fear of, when am I going to wake up with a fever and a sore throat and shortness of
Right.
breath, right? And so I'm very, very worried that there could be a spike in suicides and attempts during this time period. And I just think that there's a lot going on social media about the need for self-care, and don't forget, in the midst of hand washing, don't forget about your mental health and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's all valid and valuable, because we need those reminders, because there's also, as you said, there's a lot of unhealthy stuff out there,
Yeah.
that can be detrimental to folks living with mental health challenges.
Yeah. I'm so concerned for this spring. And I try to explain that a lot to people, how actually the suicide rate increases in the springtime. People got through the holidays for their family. Now it's springtime and, they're just done. And that,
Yeah.
I'm really worried. And you actually, in talking to you, you just reminded me of something else that you and I discuss quite frequently. And that's, positive quotes, right? You and I love them in a joking manner. That we're throwing them down everybody's throat. We're choking people with it.
Yeah.
But we're not teaching anybody how to actually do those positive things. I mean, you can say as much as you want, it's okay to not be okay. Is that how
Right.
you say it? Is that the saying for that? I
It's
always say it
okay
wrong.
to not be okay. That is my least favorite one.
That's why I brought it up.
All of
Because
them.
here's the thing. Sure, it is okay, but can you explain to me why it's okay?
Right. Right.
We're not explaining it. We're just slapping a tab on it and not really, people don't understand why it's okay.
Well, we're afraid to go deep, and I think that people are just like, well, it's easy to just regurgitate this meme and not really think about what it means, or how it's impacting the people I'm sending it out to, or what is the follow up. It's the same thing with suicide prevention. That's great if you can ask the question, and if you are able to respond appropriately if someone says yes. And if you're able to refer them to a mental health professional, or maybe hold their hand and take them to an inpatient facility, you also have to follow up.
Right.
You have to follow up with that person. So if they get admitted, you visit them in the hospital. Once they get discharged, you call them that day. Same thing with these memes. This is horse shit about, it's okay to not be okay, and quote hashtag be the one, and all this stuff. That's like, okay, that's great. Then what?
Right.
Where's the substance? Okay. You can't just give me the gravy. You got to give me the chicken fried steak too. And if you don't have anything to back that stuff up with, then just post something else, frankly.
Right. Yeah. So I quote you a lot, because one of your quotes that you have, that I know, it's actually one of your best quotes, I think. And you talk about memes and walks and awareness, and they don't do shit. I mean, they're great to post everywhere you want, but what's going to save people is people.
Right. So and I'm also very careful when people talk about what I do with her. Like, there's a reason my film is called A Beautiful Day Tomorrow: Taking Suicide Awareness on the Road. It's not taking suicide prevention on them. I'm not preventing anything. It's awareness raising. Seeing that lifeline number on the bug and seeing the word suicide, that's raising awareness.
Yep.
The big AFSP walk, it's awareness raising. T-shirts, memes, all that stuff, that's awareness. And it's great, it's fine, but don't call it prevention. What is actual prevention is human connection. It is you going to someone and saying, I've noticed you don't, there's something up with you. I've noticed you're different. What's going on? Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Right.
Can we have a hard conversation? That's prevention.
Right. It's funny because when I was younger and I had my attempts, we didn't talk about it. That was like, oh, we're not going to discuss that. Even my friends that found me, we didn't discuss it for years later. And then when I had my breakdown when I was 40 and I was hospitalized, I saw who my true friends were afterwards. They were the ones that were still coming by my house after I got out of the hospital, bringing me tea and checking in on me. They were following up. They were doing the right thing. It's the same thing with cancer. I mean, after cancer, I found out who my friends were, because I get it. Like, shit is scary. All this stuff is scary. And so two things I want to say is, you're talking about asking a question, are you going to kill yourself? That's a really scary sentence to say. A lot of people just can't, just to get it out of their mouth is really scary. And that is where what you would miss does come into play, because people have used it in that message. I have a mother that was going through her son, all the things that she would miss about him if he wasn't here. And she later on texted me and told me that her son went to school, texted her and said, I didn't think you'd miss me if I was dead, and I was planning on killing myself. Please come get me from school. And she was messaging me from the hospital. She was hospitalizing him. That little sentence helped her get through it, because she couldn't say, are you planning on killing yourself?
Right,
It's really
right.
hard, Gabe. I mean, those words are hard to say.
When I do trainings, we do role plays. I have people who can't even say it in a role play, in a training where it's a totally safe environment. They can't even do it. And so what we say to people is, if you find that you can't do it, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Just get someone who can, right? Yeah. And I wrote an essay on Medium a couple weeks ago about a fight that I heard. Well, it was a really awkward situation. I was going poopies, and so I was in a stall, and the door was closed, obvi, and this father and son. The father was like, in his late 70s, and the son was a middle-aged man. They were both tinkling at the urinal. I could hear the tinkle tinkle, and they were not having a fist fight, but having an argument, and it was at a mental health event. And the son said something to the father. He said, if I died, would you even come to my funeral? And so here's a son asking I was just thinking about the utter heartbreak of these two men, this father and son, and what had to have transpired throughout the course of their lives for this son to ask that father that question. And if only they were able to have a different type of conversation. Dad, what would you miss about me if I was gone? What would you miss if you were gone? And I guarantee you the father would have said, I would miss you.
Yeah.
I would miss the times we had together. So there's this really painful barrier, I think, that exists between people. A lot of trauma, or the past, or misunderstandings, snubs, all of that stuff, all old stuff, gets in the way of us having these meaningful connections, right?
Sure does.
And I think stuff like what would you miss really kind of cuts through that, and again, takes you in a different direction that you maybe haven't gone before, where you're not rehashing the same old shit and the same old fights and all of that kind of stuff, but kind of trying to find new language. And I think that's really special.
And language, communication, all that stuff is so important. That's the way we're going to prevent anything. I mean, until people want to talk, they do want to talk, no matter how dark and how deep you get. We talk about signs, and some people don't have any signs. There's no sign that they were going to attempt. So having a conversation constantly about what you would miss, and different things in your world that affect you, is a way to keep that person from not attempting. It really is, because I get that it's scary to say, you seem like you're in a really dark place, are you thinking of killing yourself? But we have to still try to talk, because when it's too late, it's too late. I mean, it just is.
And talk before you suspect someone is in a crisis. Try to mitigate that early by making these conversations sort of a regular, habitual thing, not just bringing it out of the blue when they've lost their job, they've lost their spouse, they're in financial turmoil. Don't wait until that stuff is happening.
And I know that you and I have joked around, like texted each other and been like, I would miss, blah, blah, blah. But when we do that, even in a joking manner, it feels really good. Like, it feels like this is funny. It makes me laugh because we're being humorous with each other, but it does make me think. I mean, you and I, we've known each other for, I guess, 2 years now?
3 years.
3 years? Wow.
3 now.
And we formed a good friendship, and, I'm proud to have you in my life, and I would be devastated if you weren't part of my life anymore. Like that, like I said, you're one of my go-to guys. I mean, I rely on you for support. No pressure.
Well, I'm not going to be as easy to get rid of as your nipples.
That's true.
I'm here to stay, buddy. Don't worry about
That's
that.
true.
Don't you
But
dare edit that out either. That's bad.
I don't think they'll edit it out.
Good.
Gabe, tell everybody where they can find the movie once it after next week, because this probably won't air until the following week. So
Yeah, the answer to that question is I don't know. I'll use past tense. It premiered on April 1st on YouTube Live. So unless some smartass was sitting there with a phone recording the whole thing as it played, you won't be able to see it on YouTube Live after that. But really, the answer to the question depends on what happens in the world and
right,
when people are allowed back in movie theaters again and all of that kind of stuff. My original intention was to premiere the film locally and then tour it to indie movie houses wherever I could.
right.
But all those plans have they've been kiboshed by this pandemic. So I don't know where you can catch the film. You can catch Herbie and I on Instagram at Lovebug Trumps Hate. And there's a Facebook page with that name as well. I don't update that as regularly as Instagram. Instagram is updated about 3 times a day because I have obsessive compulsive tendencies and I love my car. So that's where you can find all of that stuff. As far as the film, as soon as I know, I'll let you know.
And for all my local people, once we do have the okay to start showing, being in large venues together, we will be bringing Herbie to Syracuse. It's going to be at the Casanova Theater
Yes.
out in Cas. They've been great about hosting us, so I obviously will be promoting that when I can. But I loved having you on the
Thank
show.
you. Thank you for having me.
I would miss my text from you saying, "Hold on, I got to go to the bathroom. I'll call you in a minute."
Yes.
I would miss being in a meeting with you and texting each other back and forth our little memes. I would also miss being on a stage with you and being
Yeah.
completely inappropriate and then getting in
Totally.
trouble afterwards. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
adore
just
you.
just remember, I didn't get in trouble.
I
You
know.
did.
And I love your family. So ciao. Thank you for
I
being
love
here.
you. Thank you.
There's someone sitting in your chair. I wonder why you didn't take your seat. I look around and you're not there. And I'm the someone in your